The Boston Celtics have had one of the greatest in-season turnarounds in NBA history, having gone from 17-19 to 2021 to now a record of 30-10 in 2022. And although they have now lost Defensive Player of the Year candidate Robert Williams for at least 4 to 6 weeks, the Boston Celtics should still be a threat in the East. So let's talk about it. When we are talking about how good the Celtics have been and will be in the playoffs, we have to start with their defense. The Boston Celtics defense since January has been one of the best NBA defenses in the league over the last few years, and by far and away the best defense in the NBA this season. They have held teams under 100 points 18 times since the new year. 18 times. That is an absurd stat. Most teams might keep teams a couple times under 100 points over the course of a season. If you have a really good defense, maybe you'll get a bit over 10. But 18 times over the course of 2022 is absolutely outstanding for the Boston Celtics defense. Marcus Smart, Robert Williams, Jayson Tatum, Derek White, Al Horford, and Jaylen Brown. When Jaylen Brown is your sixth best defender, arguably, it's a pretty good defense. Because Jaylen Brown's a very good on-ball defender. Off-ball, not as good. But on-ball, he's a pretty darn good defender. And that's the sixth best defender on this team, arguably. Not bad individual talent. That level of top-end defensive talent, in terms of Marcus Smart and Robert Williams as borderline Defensive Player of the Year candidate guys, from still very good elite talents alongside Tatum, Brown, Derek White, Al Horford, and even just fine defensive pieces like Daniel Tice and Grant Williams. There is so much defensive talent on this roster. It just allows for such consistent elite defense. There's no real drop in defensive success when lineups change with this group. They always have the personnel to have a good defense. We will talk more about the impact of losing Defensive Player of the Year candidate Robert Williams, but it is no doubt that he is going to be a loss that is significant and is going to impact their playoff chances, as he's been arguably their best defender this year. He is that rim protector who cleans a lot of things up for them in and around the rim and in the paint. He's taken a big step forward this year and has been very valuable to this group. Now, of course, a big part of their success in 2022 has been due to their defense. But you cannot talk about the turnaround from the Boston Celtics this season and not have a massive discussion about the production and two-way impact of Jayson Tatum. Jayson Tatum has been playing the best and most consistent basketball of his career over the last 3 months, specifically over the last month and a half, where if those last month and a half stats were extrapolated over an entire season, he would likely be the MVP favorite right now, or at the very least a much more heavily respected candidate. He's been shooting over 43% from deep on over 9 attempts per game over a month and a half. Those numbers are absolutely ridiculous. And it's worth noting when you talk about Jayson Tatum's three-point shooting, he's not just shooting catch-and-shoot threes. In fact, less than half of his shots from deep are catch-and-shoot. Ridiculous. Ridiculous numbers from Jayson Tatum. Now, don't get it twisted. The scoring from Jayson Tatum as of late has been absolutely elite. But it is far from his only impact on the basketball court. And anyone who only considers Jayson Tatum a scorer is simply just disrespecting Jayson Tatum. His playmaking and reads he is making on his drives to find open teammates has continued to improve over the course of the season. And it just continues to help his and the Boston Celtics offense become slightly less ISO dependent. Now, the Celtics offense and Jayson Tatum's offense can still be overly reliant on it, but increased playmaking from Tatum, especially come playoff time, is crucial as he sees more pressure, more shadows, on more help, more double teams in general. Having that playmaking ability to recognize the open men when he gets extra defenders sent his way is going to be very important, and has been very important for the Boston Celtics' success. But the impact of Jayson Tatum isn't even just offensively. The defense from Jayson Tatum gets nowhere near enough credit, which is quite surprising given he has all the physical tools to be a great defender, which he is. It's not as if his physical nature makes it surprising that he's a good defender. Yet the larger NBA community does not give him anywhere near as much credit as he deserves for as good of a defender as he is. He has great quickness and length. It's a great on-ball defender that is very disruptive on shot contested and passing lanes due to that length, and is one of the many great pieces to this Boston Celtics defense. He is far from being simply an elite scorer. He is a two-way star, period. Now, of course, there are many other factors that have played their part in the Celtics being as dominant as they have been over the last 3 months, but the MVP level play from Jayson Tatum over the last few months, alongside one of the best defensive units that the NBA has seen over the last few years, are certainly defining factors. And how well those factors continue to produce and influence the success of the Boston Celtics will be key parts to the overall success of the Boston Celtics in the playoffs. As far as Jayson Tatum showing up in the playoffs and leading his team, he has shown in the past that he will show up in big moments, and unless proven to me otherwise around the postseason, I believe in Jayson Tatum's ability to perform in big pressure moments in the playoffs. He's done it before. He did it last year. The Celtics didn't have team success, but it wasn't necessarily to any fault of Jayson Tatum. Where the bigger discussion comes into play is how the defense will perform, most specifically without their center, Robert Williams. He has been arguably the most influential and impactful defender on this team all season. And so even though the Celtics have a great defensive roster and have a lot of good to great defenders, Robert Williams cannot be easily replaced. There's not many Robert Williams in the league that can have that level of impact defensively, never mind within the same roster. The good news, Al Horford was reacquired during the summer, and Derek White and Daniel Theis were added at the trade deadline, so there are much more defensive pieces that can play either at the 5 spot in Daniel Theis or Al Horford, or can make the lineup shift and then have another good defensive piece in someone like Derek White, where then Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown can play the 3 and the 4 respectively. They can slide down to the lineup, and Al Horford can be the lone big man. And that's what I would expect moving forward into the starting lineup, is that Derek White is going to be the 2, and Brown and Tatum will slide down to the 3 and the 4 with Al Horford being the center. That would be my expectations moving forward. It is a smaller lineup, but is going to be a much better perimeter defense team than they even were beforehand, which is saying something because they were a pretty good perimeter defense team before. But now instead of having Robert Williams, you have Derek White, who's a very, very good perimeter defender. However, Al Horford is nowhere near the rim protector Robert Williams is, nor is Daniel Theis, nor can Al Horford defend in space as well as Robert Williams does. Not to mention the general impact of losing a big in your starting lineup and how that affects rim protection. How significant this loss is goes to show how valuable Robert Williams is as a basketball player. The good news is that with even better perimeter defense from this lineup, that elite rim protection will be needed slightly less, but that rim protection is still going to be lost, especially when you consider the fact they could be playing a James Harden, Joel Embiid 76ers team, a team with Giannis attacking you from the perimeter and on fast breaks. Those could be second-round matchups, never mind conference finals. Now, it is worth noting that the Boston Celtics do have a bit of a sample size this year of playing games without Robert Williams. They have played 15 games this year without Robert Williams and have a defensive rating of 109.1 in those games, which would put them at 7th in the NBA. Still a top 10 defense. It is also worth noting that 11 of those games did not include Derek White or Daniel Theis yet on the roster. 2 valuable pieces to their defense at this point in time in this season, specifically Derek White, as he is a very good defender and is going to be filling in for the injured Robert Williams, presumptively in the starting lineup. The Boston Celtics defense will be less elite, certainly, but they could still have one of the best defenses in the NBA without Robert Williams in the playoffs. Their title hopes have certainly taken a hit, most specifically their ability to beat the Bucks, who I consider to be the heavy favorite to get out of the East, but this is still a very good team with a lot of defensive talent and a lot of potential to still have a deep playoff run and compete as title contenders. If you're still watching this far into the video, thank you very much. I appreciate the support. Be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new to stay posted as we head into the playoffs, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for a video on the Miami Heat. Peace.